Hey everyone, Chris Sawyer here. The Varietal Show is back, and so are you. Welcome. I am here with my great friend Garry Brooks, and here we are at your winery. We are here in Petaluma, California, my hometown. And Garry, here you are in your place.
It's kind of a dream come true, Chris. I mean, I quit my day job back in 2004. I was working in a cube, which, it's a good gig. Went to work at Ravenswood, went back to school at Davis.
Yeah.
My wife and I started Brooks Note in 2012 after working for the man for a bit. And this has been our dream. We've wanted to do this for 20 years. So we bought a building in 2019, and this was our COVID project to turn it into a little tasting room and winery.
You've done a great job. So, I mean, I've known Garry since pretty much you released the brand, and and one of the great things about it was you were really into the Petaluma Gap, and here we are in the appellation that I actually named a long time ago, 22 years ago, or might be 23 at this point, but I named it in a bar here in Petaluma, just so you know, that's Andreessen's. If you guys know anything about the Petaluma culture.
Nice.
I did name this appellation in a bar. Which is very Petaluman.
Pretty appropriate, I think.
It's pretty appropriate.
Yeah.
It works here though. Why does Pinot Noir and in this case Riesling, which we're going to talk about in a minute, why does it work here for you?
So a couple things. So it's the Petaluma Gap is all about wind, a little bit about fog, but mostly about wind. And so because of that break in the coastal range right around Bodega Bay. As the air heats up in Sacramento, it just pulls all of that cold air in from the coast, which is fantastic for Pinot Noir. So you get a little bit thicker skins, you get a little bit longer kind of a hang time, and that all makes really, really cool Pinots.
Yeah.
It's when you treat them gently, they're expresses of their terroir, and we get to make some really exceptional wines.
Yeah. Well, I thought this would be kind of fun because we'll talk about a few different spots here in the Petaluma Gap appellation. First one, which we're tasting right now, is this Riesling. And this spot where we're at right now is in pretty much downtown Petaluma, not right in the super epicenter, but like a block off the main drag here, and but on Petaluma Boulevard, indeed. But where Paradise, the vineyard is way out there. It's on the far southeastern corner of the appellation. It's kind of near our racetrack out there in Sonoma, and it sits out there really looking at the bay, at San Pablo Bay, and it's technically almost in Marin County. And that's the interesting thing about this Petaluma Gap is it does go over into the Marin County part, and we're going to taste one from Marin County indeed. It's a very interesting area, and it's really known for the wind. The wind is very, very strong. As I said in my argument in the beginning when we started this appellation, that it's really the Bodega Head that really is the source of this wind. It comes in right off the Bodega Head. It's all rounded mountains, not high mountains, and that's why you just can't stop Mother Nature every day. And she's just gonna blow her wind on you, and that's cool. It's good.
And the wind can't see the lines on the map.
No, it doesn't know any lines.
It just goes right over.
You're right. But this is great. I mean, just on the nose, what a aromatic wonder.
So that vineyard, it gets blasted by wind from San Pablo Bay. It gets blasted by wind from the Petaluma Gap. It is an inhospitable place to grow grapes, and I feel for Lisa and Al, who are the growers out there. But their economic pain is our good luck, because it just makes beautiful Pinot, but also. Huge production wines, about 22 cases of Riesling, fermented cold. There's just a hint of little residual sugar on the end. You kind of have to have that, or it gets weird and bitter.
Yeah.
But you really don't taste it.
It's a dry finish though to me. I mean, it's a little bit, but it's just kind of tanginess that just kind of blows it up in the back. But man, it's great.
I want a big old plate of oysters from Bodega Bay, like right in front of us with this wine. Like that's sort of, it just lends itself to that kind of.
I want it.
That pairing. I know, right?
I agree.
Isn't that cool?
It's so fun. Great nose. Shane Finley, who you know well, and who makes these wines out there too. He was the first one that let me know that they had some Riesling out there. I was like, oh, no kidding.
It's really good.
It's really good. It's just I feel like California has kind of let down people on Riesling. we do have some possibilities here, and we have better ones. I think Anderson Valley is our greatest example of it. But we get some of these great places like Smith Madrone up in Spring Mountain and these places. But this vineyard is in the right place.
It's a great spot, and you know what? It's that cold weather. I think there's enough sunshine out there. It's not too diesely. You can find a little hint of petrol in there, but it's not overwhelming, which kind of can throw people off Riesling sometimes. And I just think it ended up being a really lovely balanced wine.
I think so too. So there's a big production of 20 cases of this, you guys. 20 cases. That's how much he cares about Riesling. So not bad, huh?
When you have your own building, Chris, you get to do little side projects, and this definitely qualifies as a side project.
That's super cool.
It's pretty fun.
I love it. So speaking of Pinot,
should we talk a little bit of Marin Pinot?
Let's go for the Marin.
So cheers. So this is 2 vineyards in Marin County. So just there's that little triangle of the Petaluma Gap that drops down into Marin County. Chileno Valley Vineyard, which is dry farmed.
Yep. And
it's sort of on a bench about 300 feet above the valley floor. And then Zaya Ranch, which is organically farmed.
Okay.
And Zaya is the coldest vineyard that we work with. The fog line really just sits kind of right next to that vineyard. So, where we're picking stuff in the Petaluma Gap, usually kind of like early September, maybe second week in September, we'll pick a Zaya the first or second week in October.
Wow.
So it's just, it makes these really beautiful floral aromatic wines.
Yeah.
It's such a fun thing. So it's about 60% Zaya and about 40%.
Wow. And where's Zaya? What's it located near?
Do you know where Marin French Cheese is?
Oh yes.
So it's right around the corner from Marin French Cheese on Hicks Valley Road. There's this tiny little 2-room schoolhouse, and then this beautiful vineyard that goes up the slope,
so
kind of right across from there.
I love it.
You cannot. It's rolling pastures of West Marin, kind of West Sonoma.
It's a great place. You go out to Tamales and you drive in the back road, or Marshall. The Marshall back road is so amazing. It's like an epic back road. But the wind comes in, the fog is there, lingers. You really get this earth kind of tone to this, and a lot of that almost sea smoke kind of effect.
Right.
There's a little bit of briariness to it. From these kind of wild berries that are growing somewhere out there that got that one little bit of sunshine that come out of it. It's beautiful.
I think there's really cool kind of an herbal thing on the finish too. There's a little bit of a wild sage that grows out in the vineyard, and I think you just catch that on the finish. And so, think about that with like herb crusted lamb chops, or rotisserie chicken with lots of garlic and herbs. It kind of kills it. It's such an amazing food wine.
You just had a big gig here last night, didn't you?
We did. We had 65 people. It was pretty fun. It was a good.
Now, before we go too far into other things, tell everyone a little bit about this building and why you chose this building of them all.
So, you talked about how I've kind of had this thing with the Petaluma Gap. So I've always worked in this area. So when I first started, starting the wine business, I was over in Sonoma. My first Pinot house was Costa Brown, and we worked with a bunch of vineyards from the Petaluma Gap, Gap's Crown and Tierra di Benicio. And then when I was at Dutton Goldfield, we worked with a bunch of places in Marin County. So kind of that's where I met Mark Pasternak. I started working at Zaya Ranch,
the Rabbit Vineyard.
So contextually, I've always had this thing for Petaluma, and I've always had this thing for the Petaluma Gap. And so a couple years ago, our custom crush bill started to look a little bit like a mortgage payment, and so we were looking for a place, and we wanted some place that we could be, close to the vineyards that we're working with, but also that had this really vibrant downtown. It turns out that the economics of this thing work a lot better if you can have both your tasting room and your production facility in the same place. And Petaluma just fits the bill. You can't, this is a 100-year-old building. It started off as a Studebaker dealership. You can see a couple of the trusses in the video, but it's like there's beautiful wood beam trusses, and we were able to save it all. You get this real beautiful kind of warm industrial feeling from this space.
Yeah, believe me, I walked in here and I saw the facility in the back. I'm like, oh, dude, you scored. I mean,
It's like
it's pretty in here and it's wonderful in here, and it's the wood you got is like so, like milled locally. Everything is amazing, but you got a damn good facility in the back.
I was telling you earlier that this is the maybe one of the nicest places that I've ever made wine, and there's silly things like, we've got enough water, we've got enough electricity, we've got a chiller in the back. The floors all slope to the middle.
Yeah.
I've spent so much time chasing around the floor with a squeegee trying to get the liquid into the right place. It's sort of to have it all kind of go where it's supposed to go.
I remember Ravenswood was a classic.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Joel, I told you a story on him when they built the new facility out there near that cherry place, and his favorite thing was like looking at the drain. He wanted to point at the drain because he had a drain.
It's such a big big change. It's so nice, and and Petaluma has been so welcoming. I mean, it's really
we care here in Petaluma.
It's true. I mean, it's sort of the community has really come out to support us, and it's both by drinking wine and being in the wine club and coming to music on Fridays and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So it's been quite a lovely place to get rolling here.
Yeah, that's great. So once again, this is Petaluma Gap, and it is in Marin County, and we do overlap that. And Mark Pasternak is a very good example of that kind of a vineyard. It's kind of near Samuel P. Taylor Park, which is state park, and it's amazing if you've ever been there. But he's also a rabbit farmer and makes the best rabbit sausage of all times. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
I'm kind of addicted to the stuff, but let's not go there right now because it'll just make me hungry.
Well, yeah, but the rabbit sausage will go really nice one with the next wine.
Yes, it will. So you also do Russian River. So let's kind of do a comparison here with Petaluma Gap versus Russian River.
Sure.
What do you really like so much about the Russian River? You obviously worked at Costa Brown, and the Dutton Goldfield, two of the great brands of Russian River.
I think so. For me, let's start with kind of what I love about Pinot.
Yeah.
And I think that if you treat Pinot Noir gently, you don't pick it too ripe, you don't put too much oak on it, you don't put too much whole cluster in it.
Yeah. Or just be too much winemaker on it.
Yeah, you let the wine express where it's from. You end up with really lovely wines that express their terroir. And so for me, the Russian River has always been a little bit more cola-y. And so and you end up with kind of a little bit darker fruit. Petaluma Gap, a little more herbal. That kind of blackberry, sort of that zone. It's a really different kind of.
I got a lot of wild strawberry out of this Petaluma Gap one too.
Yeah, out of the Marin.
Yeah, it's just you want to find those wild strawberries. You're always looking for that stuff out there. And it's such an interesting area. I mean, Point Reyes National Seashore is right there nearby. Tamales, Marshall. This is where the oysters come from for Hog Island Oyster Company. It's just it's an amazing place. That we're so lucky here in Petaluma to be between us and San Francisco is Marin County. That's it. There's nothing else. I mean, I live right on the Sonoma-Marin County border. I mean, I'm in Marin County in 40 seconds out of my driveway. So it's in the country. So, it's an interesting place that we have dynamics that are very different than Russian River. I think the biggest difference to me with Russian River is ripeness is. It's easy in Russian River. You grow Zinfandel there. You can't grow Zinfandel here. It's impossible.
It's way too cold.
And it's just too cold here, and it's because of that mountain range that I was talking about. So you got a high mountain there in Russian River, and you've got low-lying hills like this in Petaluma. You're not going to stop that wind, and you're not going to stop the fog, and that's probably the most interesting thing about it. Preserves that acidity, preserves the flavors, gives you longer hang time, lets you just express what the place is.
It is. I think, I think Russian River wines, they're always beautiful and can be silky and, expressive. And sometimes you get, to me, you get more of that herbal character kind of from the Gap. It's a little bit more, a lot of times a little bit more tannin in there too, which, it's, I always love Pinot with a little structure in it.
Me too.
And, and that.
Speaking of structure. Well, I figured since you guys aren't here with us, but we need to talk about a broad sense of, like, we can go beyond Petaluma Gap. And I want to say something too for the Petaluma Gap organization, the Alliance. Amazing organization, and I was happy to help found that, be a person there that they came to when I wrote for the San Francisco Chronicle back in the 20 plus years ago when Michael Bauer was my boss, and that they really trusted me, and they said, Chris, we really want to make an appellation here, what should we do, and blah blah blah, and I helped in those starting points. We were at this tasting last weekend, and there were tons of people. There were tons of producers, and there's tons of things. And that's where Petaluma Gap has gone in a 25-year process here. And it was so exciting about, just as Anna Keller calls me, the godfather of the Gap. It's going to be on my tombstone for sure. Just like the Small Age of Stars. That's for you guys.
We need some music when there's like in the background.
But I'll take total credit for that one.
Yeah.
But it's been exciting for you too, hasn't it?
You know what? It's so about that tasting last weekend. It was so much fun to have all of these really amazing small producers, mostly that were out at that Wind to Wine tasting. Yeah. It was such a great time, and I think it's one of those things where, God, if you can get there next year, yeah. It's not a super expensive ticket, and it's an amazing way to really taste all of these really cool vineyards from the Gap.
I agree.
It's but and for me, it's being in Petaluma, being part of this community, having a place where you can come and taste Petaluma Gap wines in the Petaluma Gap. You would think there'd be a bunch, but it's not. Like it's
kind of like what I'd say like Alexander Valley is to Cabernet. Go to Alexander Valley, you have a ton of vineyards and a few wineries, because it's really more about the grapes than it is the like it's, you don't want a bunch of flossy, cool looking wineries and stuff. You just kind of want to be real agriculture. You want to be farmers, and I feel like Petaluma Gap has done that. We've always been farmers here. I mean, this is the butter and egg steak capital of the world. It's also the world's wrist wrestling championship is held here. The accordions are just a little bit north of here. So all sorts of things that we have. But, this is where a lot of the original wines from the north were shipped out from here, because we're the first real river that comes the most northern that you could get to. Not Napa. Napa's hard to get to if you were like someone up north. So you'd come here and you'd ship it to San Francisco, because there was no Golden Gate Bridge. So this is how you would do it, was come to Petaluma. So there were thousands of acres planted before the Prohibition, and some of that was actually by Senator Fair, who came from, believe it or not, from Nevada, and came here, and on Petaluma High School, where I went to high school, is on Fair Street. Guess what else he did? He started a little hotel called the Fairmont. Anyone ever hear that? I mean, that's how cool it was. Petaluma was happening, and it still is happening, But speaking of other happening areas, another area that I think of, and a vineyard that's very special to my heart, is the Weir Vineyard. It's a little bit out there, isn't it? Tell us, everyone, where it's at.
It is. So Weir Vineyard is in the Yorkville Highlands, which is kind of the pass in between the Alexander Valley and the Anderson Valley. So, the first little bit of up and the last little bit of down as you're moving from kind of Cloverdale towards Boonville. And
Mendocino County.
Mendocino County. So this is, the Alexander Valley side, that's all Cab Country, Dietz Syrah, that kind of stuff. The other side, it's all Pinot Country. So same watershed as the Anderson Valley, same soil, same, a little higher elevation, but it's a really amazing spot. Decomposed granite soil, so it's a schist instead of kind of a little bit heavier clay, mostly in the Petaluma Gap. And there's also a really crazy diurnal cycle. So you'll get this temperature swing. It'll be in the upper 40s at night in the summertime, and then it'll be in the low 90s during the day. And because of that, you can hold on to the acidity. You get these really bright, beautiful flavors, but really different fruit profile, really different spice profile than we get in Petaluma Gap, right? So for me, like we're tasting our 19 Weir Vineyard Pinot, and
great vintage too,
right? Is like it was kind of that one wasn't hard, and for me it's like there's a lot more licorice, there's a little more cardamom, kind of brighter red fruit in there. It's
Yeah.
like it's and really amazing length. Like
Yep.
this is my walk around the block wine.
Yep.
Like you can kind of, you take a sip and then head out, and you know 15 minutes later you still get a little bit of that flavor, which I think is so much fun.
Absolutely. I just love this vineyard. I love the family that owns it. You know, this is some old cuttings too. I mean, this is some what are the clones in this one?
So we use there's 4 out there, but we use a Rocchioli clone, and Rocchioli is it's a suitcase clone that brought back by Joe Rocchioli.
Yeah.
The 2A clone named by scientists.
Badentsville.
Right. So
from Switzerland.
From Switzerland. And then the other one is a Romani Conti suitcase clone that Paul Masson brought back. So,
Not bad.
yeah, it's sort of, and I always get a little skeptical when people use the words Romani Conti in describing their wine. But really that clone is responsible for all of the mid palate in this wine, and it just grows over time. Yeah. And I've never worked with anything that kind of does that. Yeah. So I don't know, maybe it is. But it's really delicious.
Yeah, and you do such a good job too of keeping it really. It's just sexy right now. You know, it's really sexy, and it's not big. And I mean, it can be big. It's an area that can get hot. I mean, up there, you can grow Cabernet in this area. I mean, but it depends on right where you're at. But it's amazing, and you know, I think that this is really the, you know, when you find the right site in these places, you know, you have people like, you know, the Meyer family, you know, Justin Meyer, who's founded Silver Oak, and he purchased property up here a long time ago. And these are the things that, you know, when you know you've got the right place, and it became a great appellation. It's not as well known as Anderson Valley or some of the interior areas of Mendocino County, but man, when you find these right spots there, you've got like some of the most dreamy places, and the potential is so great.